AuthentiKit fans, welcome back. Check out all these amazing replica flight controls that this community has designed and built over the last 4 years. We've got Spitfire stuff, American warbirds, German warbirds, even general aviation. It's a pretty good collection, isn't it? And if you're absolutely new to AuthentiKit, the amazing thing is that all the designs and files for all of these controls are available for free from our download website. You can 3D print these yourself from the free files. And if you don't have a 3D printer, we can put you in touch with an approved community member who'll print them for you at mates rates. So, a good start. But this is nowhere near the vision that I have for AuthentiKit. Right now, we have a little over 50 downloads available on the website. In a couple of years or so, I want to see a figure that's nearer 500. So that whatever you have a passion for in flight simulation, somebody, somewhere, has made something for it. Potentially even a whole cockpit. Now that has been my plan from day one, and it's why, when I was designing these controls, I didn't start each one from scratch. I made a set of reusable components which have been refined over the years, and one that you probably know is the mag hole. So in this compact little unit, you can drop into anything. You've got the sensors to give you the axis data, you've got the smooth bearings for the smooth lever action, you've got friction built in, there's even hydraulic damping on that option. So the video I'm making today is a big milestone for AuthentiKit. It's something I've been trying to do for almost 3 years. My goal is to turbocharge the community development of flight controls, whether that's Cold War fighters, Second World War big prop aircraft, or even biplanes from the golden age of flight. And this is how I hope to achieve this. Through the release of the AuthentiKit System Development Kit, or SDK, that will help anyone easily design a flight control for themselves to the AuthentiKit standard. And that's kind of the most ambitious thing, because I'm not expecting that many of you are experienced CAD designers. In fact, I am expecting that many of you will have never used CAD design software in your life. So keep watching if that appeals. And at the end, if you want to get early access to this SDK, I'll explain how. So right now we're on the brink of releasing phase 1 of the SDK. It includes a set of what we call approved control devices, or ACDs, and they give you the functionality, like the mag hole here, to do axes, switches and buttons at this stage. We've also incorporated many years of experience into a rich documentation that will save you many hours of testing. So how thick should a lever be for rigidity, for example? And how much space do you need to make a wire channel? We'll be complementing these with a set of YouTube videos explaining how to incorporate these ACDs and how to construct a full working design. We've also got a small team of guys who will help guide you and support you, and they'll help you get the controls documented, released and launched. Now, as I mentioned, we're not expecting you to be experienced users of CAD, so this is all a bit ambitious. It will be a limited rollout, and that means, for the time being, the only eligible software is Fusion 360. It's very powerful and it's free for hobby use. We're also only considering throttles at the moment. Trim wheels and more will follow later. We'll only release the SDK, including these ACDs, to a limited number of people. And if you want to be one of those people, you need to commit to working with us, giving feedback, developing the throttle to the AuthentiKit standard so it's compatible with the rest of the AuthentiKit ecosystem. Still interested? Well, for the rest of this video, I'm going to be putting my money where my mouth is and showing you, or giving you a flavour of how to design an AuthentiKit flight control. And because it's phase 1, it will be a throttle. So this is the throttle I'll be using for our example. It's for a Boeing PT-17. It's a trainer from the 30s and 40s, specifically the 2-lever throttle and mixture control version. I will be making it in Fusion 360, and in a future video you can follow me through every mouse click as I design step by step, and you can follow along and do exactly the same yourself. But in this video I intend to give you an overview of the development stages and a flavour of what it's like to design this in Fusion 360, so you can see how our SDK really does turbocharge your development work. So let's get started. Now there's obviously quite a few individual steps, but I've grouped them into these 11 stages. We've got reference diagrams. Then we'll make our first extrusion, and that will be the rear panel. Then we'll pull in a throttle lever, or we'll make a throttle lever from an ACD, in this case a mag hole. Then we'll make a front plate, or a front panel. Then another ACD will be used to make a mixture lever. We'll need felt braces, or brace plates, and I'll explain those when I get to them. We'll need a middle plate, add some knobs, some wire channels then, so that we guide the wires out of the way and they don't snag. Then a back box, and finally we'll wrap it up with some decals and finishing touches. Okay, so the first thing we need is some reference material. Now in the past I've worked with photographs. I've also worked with STL files. So these are CAD files. In this example here we've got the P40B, shared by the Big Radials guys who made the P40B for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So the very same files that went into that aircraft as a simulator add-on can be a basis for designing a throttle. And then of course working with drawings, which is fantastic if you can get good drawings. You could even work with screenshots from the flight sim. But the main thing is to get square on orthogonal images, front on and side on, and anything else is a bonus. And then you need one reliable dimension to get the scale right. Now in this case I joined Air Corp Library and I obtained some drawings for the PT-17 from there. One extra thing I did before using this image in the CAD software is to find the center of rotation of the levers, because I'll be using that as an origin. Now assuming this arc has a constant radius, which it pretty much does, the center of rotation would be here, not the center of this circle. So I drew that on before I used it. Okay, so now we're in Fusion and we're going to extrude our first body part, which is going to be the rear panel of the throttle. I'll do this in more detail in the full video, but you can see here I've got the image loaded in and I have scaled it. Now I make a sketch where I'll effectively trace over this picture. So if you see where the arc is at the top, I'm going to make a circle that overlaps that. And then we have another arc that we need to model, so I'm going to do that and as another circle. Then I need to draw a couple of lines that will handle the sides, these two sides here, and that will give me the basic outline for the front panel. So I've done that sketch just quickly, and that's what we end up with. Now if I hide the canvas, so I'm just rotating that sketch a little bit, you can see here that I can rotate it in the, I guess, what is that? The y-axis actually. If you look top right you can see a cube moving, so that's actually the y-axis. So I'll rotate a little bit so you can see what happens when I do this extrusion, otherwise it'll just go into the back of the screen and you won't see anything. So a little bit of a tilt to it, and I will select that main area there, but to get the full piece of it I need to just highlight, zoom in a bit, hold down shift again as I click these areas, zoom out a little bit, then I hit E, or there's an icon up here for extrude, but I hit E. That's the shortcut I prefer. Then I'm going to extrude backwards. That means that the front face of the rear panel is in the plane that I've drawn on, which I've just decided I'd like to keep it that way. The distance I want will be 5 mil. That's a standard for a strong rear panel, and then hit OK. So I've made a new body. And there we go, that is our first extrusion. And in fact I might color it as well. Let's make it black. I hit A for appearance, and I've got in my set of favorites here glossy black. There we go. Now a final touch, because these corners, these sharpish corners don't look very nice, is I will fillet them a bit. Nice and easy thing to do. There's an icon up here for fillet, and I select that. I'm clicking shift. The way I do the rotate is you click shift and then you hold down the mouse scroll, and then you move up and then shift. I've got 4 things selected, and I think about a 4mm, maybe a 5mm. Pretty good. That's about right. So if we overlay the canvas again, if we just do it like that, we can see it better. I think that's not bad. If I take the canvas on and off, we've done pretty, yeah, that's pretty good. That's our first extrusion. Okay, so far we're just doing normal CAD design, but now we're going to use one of the approved control devices that come with the SDK to make our throttle lever. On the left, we have the ACDs that come with the SDK. They all come in a zip file. You can upload them into a Fusion 360 folder, and then you'll get all of these options. We're going to drag in the MagHaul 6803 HXF, and this is the V4 version. Let's say OK to that. Now this license cube here, we don't need that. So if we just expand things, we can remove that. And the other thing we're going to do is break the link. So I'm right-click, break link. The break means we can play around with these parts and modify them without being locked into the source design. So now we need to position the MagHaul at the center of rotation. And we do this with a joint. Now we know that this point here is the center of rotation. So if I rotate things around, and we can see the back, there's a couple of things. If I zoom in here, you can see that sort of criss-cross pattern. That's because 2 bodies have the same face, or they share parts of the same face. If I expand things up here from the MagHaul, we have a base blank, and you'll find out more about that in a second. And then we have the base of the MagHaul itself, the thing you're going to print. So I'm going to hide most of the MagHaul for now, reveal the base blank, because if I select that, then it's quite an easy thing in Fusion just to select that face, and the center of it will automatically be detected, because that's what we want, the center. So now if let's get things at a useful angle. If I go up here to assemble joint, and I've already selected it. Let's unselect so you can see it happen. If I click here, you can see that it detects the dead center of the MagHaul base. And now if I click here, it picks that point that we want it on, and it pulls the base blank across, and if I say OK, it'll pull everything across. Now let's reveal the whole MagHaul unit again. So now the MagHaul is locked to that point. But that's not quite what we want. We need to make a couple of changes. We want to recess the MagHaul, leaving just 2mm of the rear panel. That's the right depth for the screw length that we want, and it also keeps the width of the overall unit reasonable, because of course these 3D printed levers are quite thick compared to metal, so we need to kind of economize a bit on space. So if we go back to the joint we just made, and if I go to the bottom here, that's the one I just made, and I right click edit it, I'm going to, let's just make sure we get the right arrow, I'm going to recess it. You can see I can move it in that axis. I'm going to take it in -3. It's a 5mm panel. If I take it in -3, that means that there's only 2mm left on the other side. Now I'm going to cut away. Well, this is one of my favorite tools. I'm going to get rid of this sketch first of all. Let's hide the sketch. In fact, let's also hide the MagHaul. Just click those little eyeballs there. That makes things hide and disappear. And then up here, brilliant function called combine. If I select that, that's the target, the back panel. The thing I'm going to use as a tool body is the base blank. Now the default is to join them together. I don't want that. I want to cut away. And I don't want to keep the tool either. Once the base blank's done the cut away, it's done its job. So say OK. And there we go. We've got, if I just highlight it a little bit for now, I can put an appearance on it. You can see the face. I've hit A, and if I drag some white thing there you go. Very, very obvious now that we've now got a recess of 3mm. And if I put the MagHaul back visible again, it sits in there very nicely. Okay, nearly there. Next bit, let's hide the mag hole again. In fact, let's hide the whole lever unit. Oh, one more thing to say. There are different levers for different purposes. There's a sort of a bent one that suits a lot of the American Warbird levers, but there's another one that comes in here, which is a straight one. Oh, there we go. Hide that one. There's a straight one. And each of these you can work on yourself. I can make this shorter, longer. Can't make it much thinner. You need a certain amount of strength. But they are what we call a proto lever, which means it's a sort of a prototype and you're able to modify it to meet your needs. Anyway, back where we were, we're going to use this one. And what we now need to do is make the screw holes. So if I hide everything, you can see that these little recesses here are also a little cutout. I've got to hold, make sure you select the face, not the outer ring. So click it and then shift click and then shift click, and then we'll extrude again. So that's, I'll use this one this time. And so I can extrude forward, that would make things, or I could extrude backwards and that will cut things. So if I rotate it round, but I'm not extruding a certain distance, there's no need for me to calculate that it's 2 mil, because I know that I want to extrude all the way to the back. So instead of a distance, I extrude to an object. And if I select the back panel, that is the object, and now I've made the screw holes. And now, because we use chamfered M4 screws, if I select the edge this time, shift click, and I hit this very useful chamfer function, and 2 mil is the right amount for an M4 screw. Okay, so now we've got a chamfered screw fixing, and if I reveal the mag hole again, I can now put an M4 6 mil screw in there. If I zoom in, I can just show you that it is M4, that it's 6 mil. I can hit I for distance or measuring, select that. Ooh, was it already selected? Yeah, it's blue. Zoom in some more and then select that, and you can see that that is 6.36. That's the perfect, and it's here as well. It's the perfect length for a 6 mil screw. And if I rotate things round now, that is the basis. I've got here, hit this little home thing. There we go. That's the basis for our throttle lever. Now it's time to make the front panel. I've created a sketch plane. That's the yellow bit. I'll just rotate. You can see that that is a few centimeters in front of the rear panel. And I've simply projected or copied the outline of the rear panel onto it and made a sketch, which I'll just reveal to you now. And I've also added some screw holes so that we can screw the parts together. So let me just hide the plane now. Don't need that. And if I zoom in a little bit, we can hit E and we can extrude. I'll have to also select these bits here, but I'll leave the holes because those will be the screw holes. If I extrude this forward by 4 mil, that's sufficiently thick for the front panel. And OK, and there we have a front panel. It's now time for another ACD. I'm going to skip the hydraulic damper version of the mag hole this time and just use the 6803F. That just has the friction disc. So I'm going to work on the front plate. If I select or activate front plate, you can see that that gives it the focus and everything else goes a bit faded. But if you want even more sort of isolation, in fact the isolation is the right word, because if you do isolate, right click isolate on that, we completely hide the other bodies, and then we can just look at the panel that we want to focus on. Okay, so now we're going to drag in the 6803F, that's this one here, drag that one in. Okay, there it is. Let's expand that. Oh, break the link first. Oh, let's say OK, and we break the link. Then we can hide the license cube. The other thing we can do is we can just remove it as well. Right click, remove. We don't need that now. And again, we're going to make a joint. So we're going to use the base blank again as the easy thing to select. So if I just hide the mag hole itself, there's the base blank. And we're going to joint that to this side, not this side. Okay, so I don't have the sketch showing. Let's reveal that, then we can get the origin point, this point here, that we're going to joint to. And the trick now, as before, assemble, joint, we select the middle of the base blank, we select that side there, and I'll just say OK to this, and we'll do this a step at a time. Okay, so now we have the mag hole, but it's on the wrong side. That's easily fixed. If we right click on that joint from the timeline down at the bottom, I can flip it around. Now it's on that side, but it's upside down. In fact, I'll just do this so you can see. Yeah, it's upside down. Let's edit the joint again, because we can flip it around the right way up. And I'll save a few steps now, because you know the other bit is we need to recess it. Now, we're not going in 3 mil this time, because the panel is only 4 mil thick, so we're going in by 2 mil. And there we have it. And then we do the combine and select the panel, select the base blank, cut away, don't want the tools, and there's our recess. And I'll just color the recess for you again. Right, there we go. And there's the recess. So let's put the mag hole itself back in again. There it is. And same as before, nice and quick now to select, hit E, select, 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 and drag it through, roll it over, not a distance, to an object, cut, and then hit chamfer, select, select, select. Didn't need the shift select that time, if you do it that way around. 2 mil, and there it is. That is a mag hole fitted for a mixture lever, and in fact it even comes with the knob, which is close to what we need. And in the full video I'll explain how we can make that exactly what we need. We now need to make the felt brace plates. These serve two purposes. Firstly, they add more friction to the rotation as they press on both sides of the lever. Secondly, and more importantly, they give the lever strength, because otherwise the lever could be pushed, pulled, or twisted. And this fixing point here, you can see how thin this little piece is here, doesn't have a huge amount of strength. It's really quite weak. Sort of deliberately, because we are trying to keep the profile and the overall thickness of this unit quite slim. So the felt brace plates grip that side and give it some strength. So I'm just going to show you one of them here, and I'll do that on the rear plate. So if we unisolate the front plate, go to the top level, and then I'll select the back plate. In fact, I'll isolate the back plate, and let's just bring that forward, and let's take out the mag hole so we can sort of focus on things here. Okay, so I'm making a second sketch. This is how I'll do it. I'm going to make a second sketch on the rear plate. I'll show you what I've done. It copies most of the outline, but it creates a sweep area, which is going to be essentially this, this, and this, that will be covered in felt, and that allows the lever to sweep across it. In fact, let me show you the lever. And if I turn on the animation that goes with this lever, there we go, animate joint relationship, you can see the sweep of the lever. So we want felt covering all of that. I'm now going to extrude that bit, and that bit. And I'm going to extrude it as far as distance to object, the plate. So it would, at this point, it would touch. It would make perfect contact with that lever. But that's not what we want, because we're going to stick some felt to it, 1 mil thick felt. And the correct separation, which you'll find in our documentation, is to offset by 0.85 mil. So now there's a gap between the two of 0.85. If I zoom in there, you can see that gap. And that provides just the right amount of friction so that it gets a tight grip and you can still easily move the lever across against the felt. So we just join that. And then what I can do as well, just to sort of highlight that that's going to be covered in felt, if I hit A for appearance, I hit faces, and I've got some black fabric. So put that on there, so that tells us we're going to have the felt fabric on top of that. So that same effect will be repeated. Let's unisolate. Let's go to the top level. We'll repeat that on the front plate, so that needs to be 0.85 thick. And then of course we've got some stuff in the middle, and that's coming next. So here we've made a new component called middle, and in it I've created another sketch plane. I'll just reveal that now. And this sketch plane is 0.85 mil in front of this lever. And then on that, in fact, let's get rid of the front plate just to focus on things a bit here. And then on that, another sketch, which again takes a copy of the outline of the rear plate. Okay, let's hide the plane just so we can focus on the sketch. So here on the outside, we have the copy of the shape of the rear panel. And then inside is an additional line that's exactly the same shape, just set in by 10 mil. So that gives a strength of a kind of a ring. Additionally, we're going to need a plate. So there's a line here as well, which gives it, let's get rid of the back plate, which gives it some space for me to fit the felt plate. And that's essentially going to be my middle plate. Something to mount the felt to and something to separate the two levers. So let's put the back plate back, and then we're going to extrude that shape from it. And that should be 0.85 from the front lever and 0.85 from the rear lever. There we go. And then just one small thing, just to make it a little bit prettier. Let's hide the sketches. These corners here, I don't like those. Those are a bit ugly. So let's just select those and fillet those a little bit. There we go. That's a bit nicer. And maybe do a little bit here on this. I don't like the shape of that as well. Let's rotate that around. There we go. Just bring that in a touch as well. Okay. Change that drag amount to 10. I quite like to use even numbers. And maybe 4 up here. Yeah. Okay. So there's the middle plate. It's time for some knobs. So here's the throttle side on. I've loaded in another reference picture from Air Corp Library, and I've scaled it. And you can see that our default lever is actually very close to what we need. Perhaps just a touch too long. So I'll just shorten it with an extrusion. That's about right. And now we need to make a knob. Now I do it this way. I've drawn a circle directly over the knob, the sketch of the knob, in a plane that's dead middle of the lever. So here's the sketch I've done. And you can see if I rotate it around, it's dead middle of the lever. Now I've measured, and the diameter of the knob is 28 mil. So if I extrude each side of that circle by 14 mil, there you go, do that again, I now get a cylinder that's 28 mil deep or long. And now if I fillet the edges by 14 mil, I get a sphere, 28 mil diameter. So that's a pretty good start. Now it's got a face for the letter T, so if we hide the canvas, and in fact I'll just hide the knob as well. I've put a line through the center of the circle, and then perpendicular I've put a cross piece, and it basically takes a little sliver off the end of the circle. So if I just show that body again, and then if I extrude that little sliver away and cut it, and then just to show you, I will hide the sketch. Where's the sketch? In here. There we go. That's a face for the T. Now it's not exactly in the right place. It's sort of facing that way, and as we know, it should face towards us a bit. Now in the full video, I'm going to show you how I can basically rotate and move that face to the angle that I want it. And I'll also finish off where we're going to insert a little screw at the back so that we can screw the knob through to that lever and hold it securely, and also make a little slot inside the knob. What we don't want is a bird's nest of wires inside the control. They'll just snag and catch things and look pretty untidy. We will be creating a back box that all the wires come into and where they can then be connected to the RJ45 jack. Now, let's take them one at a time. The wires from the throttle mag hole are pretty easy to do. So let's hide the mag hole. And if we zoom in here, you see these little black indentations? It's not clear they're an indentation, but they are a very small indentation. That's where the wires emerge, and we can basically cut a hole. That one, and that one. Rotate it round, and I've hit E for extrude, and we'll extrude to the back. And that allows the wires to neatly run through to the back. Now, preferably, we would have the wires emerge slightly higher up, because otherwise we need to cover over and have our back panel cover over that area. And I'll tell you how we could do that, a slightly more elegant job, I guess, in the full video. So that's the back. Let's put the mag hole back. Now for the mixture wires. Okay, so now we've got the back panel and the front panel, and I've glossed over in this video these posts. They are going to support the two pieces, allow them to be fastened together, and they were made from the circles that I drew in order to create the holes earlier to connect the front panel to the rest of the body. But what we'll talk about now is the wires for the mag hole for the mixture. So they're going to emerge from here, and we want to route them through to the back panel in a neat way that keeps them out of sight and keeps them tidy and not snagging. So let's select the front plate and expand that. I have made a sketch. Let me zoom in on it. Here's the sketch. It's positioned just a little bit below the mag hole, so there's room for the wires to emerge from the mag hole, run to this point, and then reach this little sketch here. So step one, make a tube. The wires are going to run in that tube, but of course we need to be able to access the tube from the mag hole, so we need an access hole. So that's what the little V is here. In fact, here's something that you might find useful. I'm going to make a thing called an inspection analysis. So I'm going to do inspect section analysis, and I'm going to select this lever, and it's a slice down the middle, so it allows me to see things that would be obscured otherwise. And if I now drag where the slice is relative to that, there we go, now you can see half of that tube. So you can now see how the wires would emerge from the mag hole, and we now have to find a way to get the wires into that tube. So we extrude a little cutout. So if I zoom in again, let's go back and forward and you see what's happened. So there's a full tube, and then I extrude out a slot, and that allows me to bring the wires in and then pull it up the tube. I'm now going to round off, just for tidiness, that entrance, so it's kind of like a round roofed opening. And then the snag that you hit, if I was just to try and do this now, is you poke the wires through and they just sort of hit the back of the tube, and you'd find it really quite tricky to sort of hook them really and pull them up the tube out of the way. So you can make a little ramp. So that's what this little piece at the back is. You do that with it, and then you can chamfer it to make a slope, sort of ski slope thing, and then we round it a little bit more, and we round it again, and now let's hide the sketch. So now we can push the wires in here and they'll just slide up that ski slope, and it's the wrong way up ski slope, isn't it? I don't know what the right phrase is. They'll slide up there and pop out the tube with a bit more ease. Let's get rid of the analysis. Okay, so now, and let's go back to the whole thing. So now we've got the wires coming into that tube, and we're going to use the same sketch to make a hole in the back. Now I'll reveal the middle plate because the hole that I just made, in fact let me show it again, go back from there, action it again, also made a hole through the middle plate. And then that left a slightly untidy bit, so I just closed the ring of that middle plate off with another little sketch, which means that the wires run through that hole. Let's rotate it this way, and then a final extrusion using the same sketch, because you can actually use that sketch from up here and apply it to different places. So I'm starting the sketch extrusion from this plate instead of its default plane. So the same sketch allows us to create that tube, and now we've got a continuous tube to allow us to pop the wires in here, run them all the way through to the back. And if I just redo this, turn it round and zoom in, now all 6 wires emerge to the back plate, and now we can start talking about the wire box at the back. Now let's focus on the back panel and think about the back box. We're going to give it as small a footprint as possible, so I'm going to model its shape around the standard dovetail mount. So let's drag one of those in, say OK, and then break the link, and we'll expand it, we'll kill the license cube, and then joint it to the back plate. So let's see where it is here. It's there, and we want it jointed to here. So you know how to do this now. We go assemble, joint, we pick this, it knows where the dead center is. We want it here, which is the dead center of the back. It assumes the wrong way around, so we give it a rotation until it's on 180, and then let's position it. So if I click this cube at the top on back, and I'm just going to position it so it just fits in within the footprint. That looks pretty bang on. And there we have it. So it'll go on like that. Now we don't want it flat to the back because there's going to be a box where the wires go in and also where the RJ45 jack goes in. So let me edit that joint now and just pull it away. Let's not worry too far where at the moment, but just, you know, enough for us to do some work. So now I'm going to make a sketch on the rear of the back panel. I'm basically going to project the dovetail shape. Again, I'm going to make an inner contour line or outline which follows the shape of the dovetail but is set in by, I think I've gone 2.8 mil. It's essentially going to make a wall for it. I've also made some circles for some screw holes, and I've added a couple of loops here, again kind of a wall thickness, because I want the back panel to go a little bit deeper and go over the places where the wires emerge. Now this sort of half circle bit isn't so pretty, which is why it would have been nice if those wires emerged higher up and then it all could have been within the footprint of the dovetail. But we'll go with that for now. And then we can simply extrude that section. In fact, let me show you what I'm selecting here. I'm selecting, I'll hit E, and then I'm selecting this bit, this bit, this bit, this bit, and that's my extrusion. What I'll also do is these edges here, let me hide the sketch briefly. I don't like these edges here, a little bit harsh, so with a quick fillet of those I can round them. Pick the wrong bit there, let's have another go. Yep, I can round that. I'll zoom in, you can see that happening. I can round that, and then if I select another edge here, there. I can round that a bit, so that's a little prettier. I'll do that on both sides. So let me hide the dovetail. Let's show the sketch again, and now you can see how what the point of these lugs are. If I extrude this and this, let me try again. If I extrude this and this and this and this, and the same at the bottom, rotate it a bit, this and this, and this and this, and that creates a little, about 2-3 mil is probably the right amount. And now I've got some lugs which I can screw the back box down to the rear panel with. Then I need to, let's hide the sketch again, and then I need to chamfer these here so that we can fit our typical countersunk screw. Then we need to make some holes in the back box, so that same sketch is used to push some holes right through the back box. We need to think about the thickness and the depth of that. So let me see if I went for that and that, 7.5. So a 6mm screw. I might go 8.5 actually and use an 8mm screw. I think that would be better. And then another fantastic feature in Fusion 360. I select that tube. In fact, I'll do all four at once, but I'll just show you now. So it's 4mm wide. And we hit the screw thread. And we just say OK. And it creates a perfect screw thread for us. OK, so I've done that on all four corners. And now we want to fit a socket or an opening for the RJ45 jack. So again, we've got an ACD for this because this clever little device is a cutout template. And let me just bring it nearby so we can get an idea of what it is. Let me rotate it around. There it is. Bring it a little bit nearer. We're basically going to joint it to this wall and use it to cut out the perfect size shape for an RJ45 jack. So the way you do it is that you make a joint, assemble a joint, you choose the yellow face, and then you choose that wall. Now it's pointed that way, we don't want that, we reverse it, we want it so that it is like this, and then I think I'd like it to be kind of up here a bit, and then we do a combine again. Combine, target that box, select the cutout tool, and there it is. I didn't get rid of the tool, so let's get rid of the tool. And there's the perfect shape. It does some clever tricks on the inside, some filleting, some chamfering, so that an RJ45 jack will slot in there and work reliably. Okay, so now we need a lid. A quick way of doing this, if we select the top surface of the wall of the wire box, or the back box, we can draw a sketch on that plane. And in fact, I can project the entire wall, and I can also project, we just show the dovetail, I can project the screw holes from the dovetail. And if I do that, what we get is this. And then it's a very simple job of just extruding. Let's select, we've already got the wall selected, select, 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 pull that up, about 2.4 should do it, and make a new body, and there we've got a lid. And a very simple job now is just to, let's hide the sketch, just to select those holes, and apply a thread. So now we can simply screw the dovetail to the lid. So it looks like that. Let's make the lid black. Okay, one more thing to do. Let's hide the dovetail and hide the lid. How do we attach that lid to the box? Because we don't have any screw holes yet, and if we did put them in the obvious place, which is in the corners here, and then the hole and or the tube that holds the screw thread went kind of all the way down to the bottom, we get the problem that it gets in the way of that thread that fastens it to the back panel. So we use a suspended screw thread, and because they're a little bit fiddly to make, I basically made a set of them and I just reuse them and pull them in. So they are another ACD. So if I make sure I'm selected on the back plate here. If I drag these in, there they are. Now they've appeared sort of upside down, pointing down instead of up. Let's just rotate them around 180. There they go. There's two sets. There's a set that suits sharp sort of 90-degree corners and a set that suit these sort of wider curvature corners. So let's just find the four corners and hide the small corners, and then what we do is we joint them. So we make a joint the usual way, except it's a little bit more careful what we have to select. We're selecting that apex of the corner there, that little curve, but the middle of it. I mean, it can't be the end of it. There we go, the middle of it to the middle of this. There we go. That's what we're after. Now it leaves a tiny gap. The trick is to just drag that over. I think, what is that? It's enough there. That's that 0.5, 0.6 should do it. And then 0.6 the other way. Okay. And that fits in nicely. And then we do a nice combine. Target body, that. Select that. We combine it. And, oh, I didn't break the link, did I? So I can't delete the old corner, but it doesn't matter. We don't need the corner now. That's it. There is a suspended corner, and we just do that on all four of those. Then it's an easy job to extrude a hole lined up over the top of that screw thread and chamfer that, and then we can fix that lid down to that back box, and then we can put the dovetail on top. And that is basically it. We could export these body parts now, print them, and build our first prototype. However, a few finishing touches make all the difference for a nice looking replica control. You can see here I've made a gentle dome that screws to the front plate, and it covers up the screw fixings for the mag hole. If I just hide the dome, you can see what it covers over. Now, the next thing is a little text on the front, and I've drawn this sketch which basically follows the line of the arc of the top of the throttle and creates an outline for a plate. Now if I hide, let's hide a few things. Let's isolate the front plate, and let's hide some mag holes. In fact, let's hide the body of the plate. There we go. So that's just the dome, and then this little sketch up here. And then what I can do is I can extrude a section and just enlarge it slightly so it will merge and connect into a single piece with the dome. And then I've done some coloring here and some rounding of corners. Let's get rid of the sketch now. You can see I've kind of rounded some corners here, and then I combined this piece at the top so that we've got a single kind of dome with a, looks a little bit like a badge, doesn't it? So this is 7mm high text. It's just slightly debossed. You can see here it goes down by just about 0.36 or 0.48, enough to do the silicon infill or acrylic cork infill, and then that can go on the front of the panel and make that rather nice finish. And that is our throttle. So let's unisolate that. That's the whole thing. Let's put the mag hole back. There it is. We can go from the design to the render section of Fusion 360. And there we go. In the flesh, we have our PT17 throttle. Rather nice, eh? Okay folks, that's all I'm going to cover in this video. Over the next week or two, I will be finishing off the SDK. I'll be making a downloadable set of those ACDs. I'll be completing this documentation and making that full video I keep referring to. Remember, this will be a very gentle and limited launch. I won't be making the tools public. If you want to use them, this is what you need to do. Firstly, read this document outlining the scope of Phase 1 of our SDK. I'll put a link in the description. If you think your project is eligible, start a thread in our Discord channel, AuthentiKit SDK, describing the throttle, because it must be a throttle, what you want to make with a rough description of the spec, and your initial analysis of what the particular challenges will be. Myself and others in our review and approval team will look it over and discuss it with you and see if it will be suitable for phase 1 of this launch. If it is, we'll then give you access to the SDK tools, the documentation, and the detailed assembly videos. Well, that's all for now, folks. But before I wrap up, I want to leave with a request to bear with us as we do this slowly. I've been planning this release for about 3 years, and I've been a bit nervous about doing it because I'm expecting, well, hoping I guess, that it will generate quite a lot of demand and potentially a lot of work for myself and also the people helping me. Certainly it will if I want to encourage people to make AuthentiKit controls that are compatible to the full AuthentiKit system and to the way that the community is used to building and creating AuthentiKit controls. So that is my priority, and it's why I started all this 5 years ago. We will be going slowly so we can find our stride. We'll start with throttles, but trim wheels, flight sticks and so on will come later, and also the option to use other software than Fusion 360. Again, that will come later. We will get there. Please bear with us as we take this exciting first step on a new journey and a new stage for AuthentiKit. Bye for now, folks.